The United States indisputably has a vital role to play in world affairs. We have unique qualities for leadership. At present, perhaps not as a permanent state of affairs. Some of this unique role is circumstantial because our only peer adversary for over half a century is no more. Some of it is inherent in our qualities, the size of our country, the wealth that we enjoy, and the talent of our people. We can influence world affairs, both by conscious decisions that our governments make, by our society's desire to respond to humanitarian disasters, and in positions that we take in multilateral negotiations and in regional organizations. Americans, for the most part, do want to be active on the world stage, but we can do good in the world, and we can benefit as a society from active engagement in the world without being the world's policeman. Let's talk some definitions. Now, I don't know whether the organizers of this debate meant police in a literal sense, but let's take the word police at three different levels. First would be police as in a demand for someone to enforce the rules, not make the rules, but enforce them. So when you're in trouble, call 911, the police come. So that's the kind of bottom level, literal definition of policeman in this case. We could also think of the world's policeman as a metaphor for a security provider in much broader dimensions. Who sets the laws and enforces them? This would be a reference to the hegemonic stability system that we've known internationally since World War II, that would refer to, for example, America's military presence in East Asia, or in the role that we played when we finally decided to topple the Taliban in Afghanistan. And then there's a third definition that's perhaps a little more abstract: policeman as a surrogate for any use of force or for a monopoly on the use of force, including going to war, preemptive wars, preventive wars. We decided Saddam Hussein had to go. We made the rule for ourselves. It wasn't a rule for anybody else, it was just for us. So that's a third definition of the world's policeman. So I oppose this motion, and I hope you will agree with me, for several reasons. First, let's take some practical reasons. The U.S. is a country, not a global government. We have to know our limits. The United States should use force when it's in our interest, just like every other country has to make existential decisions about the use of force and about war and peace. If we step up to the role of the world's policeman, we would be committing to act and to put our soldiers and police and our citizens in harm's way where U.S. interests may be very modest. Do we want to assume responsibility to go anywhere, anytime? A second practical argument is that we can't do it. And here I mean both in terms of quantity and quality. Quantity, guess how many of the 11,000 police who are currently deployed worldwide in UN operations are American? Out of 11,000, 291 are U.S. policemen, and they are in Kosovo and Haiti, principally. So the U.S. has not provided robust manpower from our police forces. We've also learned that the way we train our policemen in a federal system is not all that well suited to the requirements for police in a lot of peace operations post-conflict. And then let's ask literally, are we capable of doing the job? Can we be the beat cop that Max talked about? Do we know the neighborhood? Do we speak the language? Do we know the culture so that we can diffuse conflict before it breaks into violence? I'm not so sure about that. It turns out that a lot of other countries, by the way, are willing to train their citizens and deploy them to be policemen in such circumstances. The South Asians, the Australians, the Canadians, and the Nordics in particular. A third practical reason is that I'm not sure the American people want us to play this role alone. There is a deep belief that the security burdens in the world need to be shared and that not all security problems affect American interests. We need to make choices. Polls show that Americans want to respond when there are humanitarian requirements, etc., but they don't want to do it alone. Now, I'm not going to make the cost argument because I actually don't think it's the most persuasive one. The U.S. does still contribute 25% of the UN's costs to deploy forces around the world, but we are behind in our dues. And before we criticize the UN, I think we'd better decide whether the underfunding of some of the UN's activities are in fact because we haven't paid our fair share. Second set of arguments I want to make against this motion are political ones. And here basically it's two arguments. One is an argument about today, the particular moment that we're in, and another is an argument about the horizon, about the future. I think today we have a particular problem trying to assert that we could or should be the world's policeman. We have overused our global leadership role. We have abused, in a way, the goodwill of the international community by deciding that we knew better than anyone else how to bring security to dangerous parts of the world, and it turned out we weren't as good at it as we thought we would be. We have not necessarily made at least the key Iraq and Afghanistan more secure or more stable. This is not the moment to reassert the policeman's role. A third set of arguments. At the horizon, my argument is that there is a realignment of power in the 21st century. Other countries are rising. This does not mean that the United States is in decline. It does not mean that we're weak. But other countries are rising, and it's a good moment to try to reallocate some of the responsibilities for these activities. I have a last argument, which is a philosophical one. I think it would behoove American society and the long-term interests of the American people if we would take a more nuanced and egalitarian sense of our place in the world. In the age of globalization, we've benefited at least as much as everybody else, but we have to start to recognize that other people are good at this game too, and that we have to have more respect for the capacity of others to contribute to the global commons. So what I advocate is a multilateral approach to the security needs of the international community. I want an integrated approach that doesn't look just at the security aspects of some of these problems, but weaves together cultural, political, and economic dimensions of policy responses. And I want us to care a lot more about the legitimacy of how we engage internationally, particularly since, as the world becomes more democratic.
Time is up, Ms. Laipson.
Okay, thank you very much.